It's live now. Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. We are the regional directors. Today we are joined by Diogo. Diogo, say hi.
Hello.
And he is the regional director for Europe, and we also have the amazing Edward, who is the regional
Hello,
director
everyone.
for Africa. And myself, Ignacia, I'm the regional director for the Americas. Sadly, Reda and Farhan, the regional director for Asia Pacific and EMR couldn't meet us today, but they will be following us online as well. So we would just like to start by saying what points we will be discussing in today's meeting. The idea of this webinar is to create a preparation platform for all the new presidents and new presidents, and also trying to prepare yourself so you can take the full advantage of the meeting. I think you can post questions on the chat that is available on the YouTube window in the right, so feel free to do that at any point of the meeting, and if you do so, we will be answering as soon as we read those. Yes, they can post questions. So for today's webinar, we had in mind to do the following agenda. We will very quickly start by introducing the meeting and the agenda. We will follow by talking a little bit about the voting rights, how to obtain voting rights. Also, we will be introducing the plenary team and the plenary system. And lastly, we will be going through every plenary so we can discuss the points in the agenda. Okay. So for starts, I would just very quickly go through the general agenda of the meeting. So if you're a president or someone who will be attending the president session, you will know where we exactly meet. So I will be showing my screen right now. Okay, so is it looking good, guys? Just tell me if it is. So for the agenda, we will be having, this is the general agenda. You can find this on the survival kit on the NMO server. For those who don't know who the NMO server is, it's basically the emails where every at ifmsc.org emails are sent. So this is the general agenda. I'm actually having the President's Survival Kit as a main guide for this webinar. Don't worry, we will be sharing everything related to documents and survival kits after in a follow-up meeting. So for you guys, presidents or anyone attending the president session, head of delegations, we will be meeting for the first time on day 1, which will be August 2nd on the space here, which is called sessions. We will be meeting in the presidential session. And also on the same second day, we will have the opening ceremony that will also serve as the first plenary. We will discuss every point of the plenary in a little bit more. So we will also be having sessions on morning of August 3rd, August 4th, on the afternoon on August 5th, and August 6th. So if you want to know everything that we will be discussing in each president session, in this survival kit, you will be able to find the agenda. But due to limit constraints, we will not be able to follow up on every item of the agenda on this webinar. But we will for sure be providing everything and all the documentation you need to be prepared for those sessions. So if you want to know more about each one of these other items that we will not be discussing today, because today we will only discuss sessions and plenaries. If you want to know more about everything else that is here, we will kindly invite you to join us tomorrow at 15 GMT for the general members webinar, where we will go through every item on the agenda and tell you how to prepare for each one of them. Also, we would like to use this opportunity to, if you're new, and this is a new GA, the first GA for you, or you're second and third and you want to be more prepared than in your previous ones, I will really like to encourage you to read the survival kit or the manual that the small working group on involvement prepared for you guys to really get ready for this meeting. We will be also sharing that manual with you in the follow-up email that we will be sending after the webinar ends. So I think that's about it for the introduction. Up next, we will have Diogo, the RD for Europe. He will be presenting the how to obtain and maintain voting rights part.
Okay, so good night, everyone, or at least for the Europeans. Almost good night of sleep for the people in Asia, and good morning for the Americas, or almost good morning. So now going on to the part where we discuss the voting rights. So as you know, there's a few things that you as an NMO president have to take care of before the GA, and some of them during the GA to make sure that you have voting rights. The first one, the deadline was already passed. It was to fill in the NMO report. The NMO report is where you basically state the activities and how your NMO is, and you answer a few questions from FMSA to be informed how all their NMOs are doing. And it's essential to fill in the NMO report in case you want to have voting rights during the GA. But this is just the first step. So until the GA itself, you also have to fill in the ifmsa.org information. So you have to update information about your NMO. Then you also have to pay all the debts towards IFMSA, and until the second day, you have to fill in the credential form. Basically, the credential form is it's just one paper where you have a list of where you have to write a full list of your delegation names. It's the official paper that states who are the delegates from your NMO present at the GA, which then says who can speak in the General Assembly. So if you don't fill in and give the credential form to the plenary team, then you won't also have voting rights. It's very basic to fill in. You just have to fill in that with the name of all the delegates from your NMO, and then if everything is filled in correctly, it will be okay. However, as everything in FMSA, if you need any help filling it in, you can just approach any member from the FMSA team of officials, especially any regional director or the vice president for members, or you can approach anyone from the plenary team or the CCC. This basically applies to all the meeting itself. So as you know, people in FMSA try to help everyone as much as they can. So even though you are watching this webinar and if there's things left unanswered, as soon as you arrive to the GA, you'll see hundreds of people. So if you find someone or if you have any doubts, you can feel free to approach anyone, but especially the team of officials, which will be there to support you and to remember you all these details that sometimes are very easy to forget. But just summing up about voting rights, if you want to take care about voting rights, you needed to fill in the NMO report. You need to update your ifmsa.org page about your NMO. You need to make sure you have no debts towards IFMSA, and you need to fill in the credential form. Okay? So this is basically the information regarding this. And now we are going to proceed to the presentation of the plenary team. Ignacia?
Yeah. So once, like before we continue presenting the webinar, I would just like to quickly comment that I'm not being able to enable the Q&A part for the webinar. So just feel free to comment on the video of YouTube, or ask us questions in the WhatsApp groups that we have with the RDs. So I think the three of us will be answering those after the comments on the video, or you can approach us via WhatsApp. I'm very sorry, I don't know if it's the first time that I'm not being able to enable the feature of Q&A for the webinar. But you can leave the comments in the video, so we will be checking those constantly. Okay, so for the plenary team, firstly, I know many of you are attending this meeting for the first time, so you will not know what plenary is. Basically, our IFMSA works as a federation, meaning that each NMO, each national member organization has a vote, And every decision of the Federation is made on these plenaries that happen twice a year, in the March meeting and in the August meeting. So this is the only two instances we have to vote. Right now in the IFMSA, we don't have online votings or other means of voting in smaller meetings. We just have these two main events as the main decision-making body of our federation. So as it works, every day at night we gather together in a plenary, which is basically one spot or seat per NMO, and also the plenary team who will guide the plenary. So basically, the plenary works in the motion forms. It works based on motions, and motions are basically requests that either NMO or team of officials do that want to be voted upon during the plenary. So we have already set the agenda. We will go through the agenda of each plenary, and we will also be telling you what do you guys need to read to prepare for those discussions. But as a disclaimer, the discussions usually don't or should not happen during plenary. Every discussion should happen on the President session, unless it's something that happens or a new piece of evidence arises during the plenary. And in that case, you could raise your concern and discuss it there. But for the most, the discussion should take part in the President session. So we usually have a team that is in charge of moderating the meeting, which is the chair and the vice chair. We always also have the secretary and the secretary assistants who are in charge of gathering the motions and also taking the minutes, so we can review them after and collect them and follow up on the changes that occur during the plenary. We also have I will just very quickly right now show you the pictures of them so you can recognize them during the meeting. 1 second, I'm just trying to project my screen. Okay, so we have proposed candidates. Basically, the chair and the vice chair are proposed by the IFMSA Executive Board, but they need to be, and the secretary as well, but they need to be voted upon on the first plenary. So once they're voted upon, if the NMOs accept them as chair and vice chair, they will take place on the main plenary scenario or seat. So the chairperson for this meeting will be Mr. Elias Ortega Chala. He's from Argentina. He was the past RC from the Americas, and he will be the main leader in the moderation of the plenaries. Secondly, we have the vice chairperson, Torsten. I really cannot pronounce his last name, but that's his picture. So he will be in charge of helping Elias moderate the plenary for each one of the days, and he will also take the lead at some points and at some discussions. The secretary, who will also be the leading or the leader for the secretary team, will be in charge of collecting all the motions and also of leading and guiding the secretary system in the collection of statements and minutes taking. And we, as you can see here, we are missing one of the secretary assistants. So that person will be appointed during the first plenary. So if you are attending the IFMSA August meeting in Mexico, or you have a delegate that might want to be a secretary assistant, make sure to propose them as the missing position. We also have 2 returning officers for the meeting. The returning officers are basically officers that are in charge of distributing the microphone or collecting the motion forms or doing everything that might be needed to make a smooth and working plenary. And last but not least, we have the Constitutional Credential Committee. So the Constitutional Credential Committee is formed by 5 members, as you can see here. These 5 members are actually the ones that have the responsibility of checking that each form that is submitted, each candidature and each motion is valid according our constitution and bylaws. So basically, everything that we vote upon during our plenaries need to be aligned with our constitution and bylaws. And this body is the one that will be reviewing every single candidature motion and proposal, and informing the national member organizations if they are validated for voting or not. So you will be hearing updates from the CCC and also for the plenary team on each president session, and we will discuss it a bit later, but the CCC produced a report that informs every member about the validation or invalidation of the candidatures and all the motions that were sent before the first plenary. So I think that will be it for the introduction of the plenary team. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to this part.
No, but we can move on to the plenary sessions, and then if you remember, we can edit something there.
Okay, cool.
So as Ignacio explained, in FMSA, in the General Assemblies, usually you use the President sessions time to discuss the main topics thoroughly. So if we really need time to discuss or to have new amendments or to discuss new approaches to something that we're discussing, usually we do it in the President sessions, and to make the time in plenary is a bit more efficient. So as soon as we have things in plenary, most of the times the decision has been somehow or consensual or discussed in President sessions. Then we leave amendments or changes for the plenary when they are too big, or there was no consensus in the President sessions, or just if someone remembers or finds out something that they didn't discuss in President sessions. So generally, we discuss things in President sessions, and so things in plenary are a bit quick. But of course, the plenary is when the official decision is made, so you can always propose new amendments or change new things. But bear in mind that most of the discussions happen in President sessions, so it's important to be there all the time in order to be involved in the discussions. Also, for all these documents, and there are a few documents that were shared that can help a lot in the preparation of this meeting. So one of these is the survival kit that Ignacia is also that we are also using for this webinar. So it's actually also helping us. And the other is a document from the NMO Involvement Small Working Group that they created a document that basically gives a few tips and tricks for heads of delegations on how they can better prepare the delegation and how can they be readier for the GA. We'll send them all these documents again after the webinar as compilation of all the things that you may find useful. Now we'll proceed to the plenary agenda. So basically the agenda of President sessions and the plenary is very related. So now we'll focus on the plenary agenda, but if there's anything from the President session that is not going to be voted upon on the plenary agenda, feel free to raise it on the comment section in the YouTube link, and we'll try to clarify it. So going through the agenda, we'll have the first day, the plenary on the first day. It's usually something quick. It's where all the official things that we need to officially open the GA happen. So we start by opening it officially, and then we elect the people that are going to be responsible for a specific task during the GA. So we start by the election of the chairperson and vice chairperson that you already know. Then we move to the presentation of secretary assistants, and returning officers. Then the Constitution Credential Committee. Then the election of the Financial Committee, and the adoption of the agenda that is presented here. And then there's a few other things happening on the first day, which is the presentation of other organizations, observer, and guests. So as you know, in the GA there's a few externals, and they need to be presented to all delegates. Then there's the presentation of all IFMSA officials, so the team of officials and the organizing committee, so that you know who is going to organize the sessions, who is taking care of the logistics, and you know who to ask for information in case you need it. We'll approve the minutes that were shared with you over the NMO server, and then we'll have an update on the Board of Recommendation. So the Board of Recommendation It's a group of people that are external, so they were past alumni or very important people that we decided to invite to our board of recommendation, which makes them then support a few activities that IFMSA does, giving them more visibility. Then, maybe you know, IFMSA has a strategic plan from 2014 till 2017 that basically guides all the work done by the team of officials and executive board, and there will be an update on that. And then Montenegro will update us on how are the preparations going for the next March meeting 2017 that's going to happen there. So it's basically taking care of all the official procedures to open the GA and a few presentations and updates on a board of recommendation, strategic plan, and the next March meeting. In case there's any question, just feel free to ask it in the comment section, and then I'll pass the word to Ignacia.
Okay, thank you. I have like a couple of things to add just in terms of general logistics about the first plenary. The first plenary will happen on the second day, so you don't get that confused. Because the first day is arrival day, that we consider that date 0, so it might get a bit confusing, the dates and the days. We consider day 1 the first working day, which will also be the first plenary day. Just keep in mind that the opening ceremony will happen just after the first plenary. So you will need to get ready for those who haven't attended a meeting in IFMSA for a long time. Usually what you need to bring to your plenary is your flag, your NMO stamp, and any document that you might need to discuss. The motion forms, that we briefly discussed this early, the motion forms is a piece of paper where you write the form that you want to be discussed upon a plenary, are usually available with the plenary team. You can ask them for it. But please remember that if you want to submit any motion for the meeting, first you need to check if it's valid or not related to the IFMSA bylaws. The CCC will go through them, but just keep in mind that you need to check this yourself, because it's pointless to submit a motion that you know it will be invalid. And also, you need to hand this before midnight of the day before the plenary. So you cannot just submit a motion and you want that to be discussed immediately. If it is a simple motion, you need to send it the day before midnight. So I will just suggest you that if you have a motion and if you're not sure about whether it will be valid or whether it's related to the topics or whether you can submit it or not, I would really like to suggest you to discuss it with the regional directors maybe, or with the CCC or the plenary team. Those 3 bodies will be very much willing to help you out in trying to draft the best possible motion to achieve the idea that you have in mind. So I think that's something very brief about the motions. Also, the credential forms, if you want to obtain your voting rights, Diego already explained what those were, but the plenary team will also have that paper available. Please make sure to share that with them, to share that with the plenary team. And lastly, before I move forward to the second day, as Diego also said, in the voting rights part, you cannot have any debts larger than €10 according to the IFMSA bylaws to obtain the voting rights. So I know a lot of you are facing struggles with the payment of the membership fees because of several issues that happened with the invoicing process. So if you already paid and you haven't get a confirmation of the payment receipt, or if you are having doubts, or if you're not sure whether you paid the right amount or not, I would like to kindly recommend you, like on a personal note, to bring every kind of receipt or payment proof printed, so you can show that to the IFMSA Vice President for Finances if you want to clarify that. Because usually during General Assemblies, the internet we have is very bad, because we have over 700 people logging three or more internet devices, so you can expect that every internet router will collapse. So don't expect to have very good internet connection. So every document that you really need, try to bring it on a hard copy or a USB stick or something that you can access without internet. So that's kind of a recommendation before we move to day 2, because everything that I'm saying now will happen either on the arrival day or on the first day of the meeting. If you want to obtain your voting rights for the rest of the meeting, you have to make sure you have them before the happening of the second plenary. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I will really recommend you to bring your proof of payment in a hard copy or USB stick or anything that you can easily show to the Vice President for Finances or whoever will be in charge of collecting the money. Okay, so that's for voting rights and what will happen on day 1 and 2. I know this might sound a bit confusing, so if you're having issues with that, make sure to approach us via our official emails that we will also say at the end of this webinar. So for the second plenary, I will just share my screen very quick. For the second plenary, plenary 2 is actually divided into 2 parts. It's usually a very long plenary. I will also like to advise you, if this is your first IFMSA GA, plenaries are usually very long in some of the days. So be prepared for them, bring water or anything you may need. Also, don't expect to change if you want to attend the social programs. Just get ready during them. So before them, sorry. So for the plenary 2, it has 2 parts, as I already said, and we have a break we have a break just after the part 1, which will also serve as a dinner break, and then we will continue with part 2. So for plenary 2, we will basically start with the adoption of the preliminary CCC report. CCC is also the short for Constitution Credential Committee. So basically, the preliminary report will state the validity of all the candidatures, bylaw change proposals, and everything that was submitted for the 1st of July deadline that we have to submit policy statement, bylaw change proposals, candidatures, and so on. If you want to know exactly what we are supposed to submit on the 1st of July deadline, I will kindly invite you to check the IFMSA bylaws, because in one of the annexes it's very clearly stated. And if you still cannot find it, on the NMO folder that we will be also sharing, you can find all the submissions that were sent for the 1st of July. So basically, this report will state the validity or invalidity of all those submissions, and will also state the voting, like if the NMO has or not voting rights. So it's very, very important that you check this report. This report is usually shared online on the NMO server during the 1st or 2nd day of the meeting. So please try to look for it and update your emails to check if you got it. If you got it, I will really recommend to check your NMO or the submissions that you may have done and check if they are valid or not, and do whatever you may need to make them valid, like going and discuss with the CCC or everything before the plenary itself, because once the plenary is there, it's very hard to revalidate something, or if there was any mistake to clarify that. So that's for the report of the Constitutional Credential Committee. Secondly, we have the adoption of the report for the Supervising Council. For those who don't know, the Supervising Council is a body that we have that basically supervise and advise every member of the Executive Board and the team of officials. So they will be providing a report on the work that they have been doing. They have been doing several works related to the Venezuela situation, to the investigation that have been occurring, to the update on their internal guidelines, and so on. If you want to read thoroughly, I will really recommend you to do so. They already shared the preliminary report, which is and they will share the final one during the GA that will be adopted on the plenary too. So for the third part, like if you have any specific questions on what would happen if any report is not adopted, or if any candidature is not adopted for the plenary team, let us know, because that's another topic, and I don't know if you guys want to hear all about that. So for the third point of plenary 2, we have the report on the grants and events that commit IFMSA legally. That's also shared on the NMO folder. We have several reports that you can check and read. I will not go through all of them because there are more than 15 reports related to that point. But I will really recommend you to read any report that you may have an issue with, or that you may have a red flag with, and raise your flag during those discussion on the president session. Because as we already stated, the plenary was just for voting and adoption and not for raising statements or red flags if you would like to, because that's very much what president session is for. So adoption of the report on the IFMSA task forces. Basically, a task force is a group that IFMSA officially create that has a specific mandate or on regulating or on deciding or discussing about a specific topic that requires an outcome. So, for example, if we want to change the structure of IFMSA create a task force and open a call for participants where every member that wills to participate applies for it, and once the task force is created, they usually present reports on the outcomes of their meetings and work. So that will happen also on the plenary too, and the reports will be presented in depth during the president session. And lastly, we have on the first part the presentation of national member organizations that are applying for membership or a change of status. Basically, applying for memberships are all of those who are currently not a part of the IFMSA but want to be a part of it, and change of status is for all of those who are candidate members and want to become full members of IFMSA. So they will be presenting their candidature, and we will hopefully have more members of our family after the voting. That will not happen immediately after the presentation. So for the second part, we have 3 points, which are basically candidatures. The first one is the presentation of candidatures for the IFMSA Executive Board. This usually happens over March meeting, but in this specific term, we had 2 positions, vice presidents for member and for external affairs, that we were left without anyone in the positions. So we will have applications of those candidatures happening here. We also have the presentations of candidatures for IFMSA officials. So everyone will have a total of 3 minutes for presenting and 2 minutes for questions for each one of the positions of the IFMSA team of officials. If you have any question, prepare for them. This will be your moment to ask. As I told before, it's just 2 minutes, so try to make them very concise. And we will also have the presentation of candidatures for supervising council. I think that's pretty much it. For plenary 2, it's basically it goes around the presentation of candidatures for the most, and also the presentation for reports. If you have any question, make sure to send them on the YouTube. So, Edward, are you ready for the part 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, guys. Yeah, so I'll be taking you through the third plenary, the agenda for the third plenary. So for the first item on the agenda, we have adoption of changes of status of animals and admission of new animals. So this is where we are going to vote on whether to accept the new animals who have applied for to be part of IFMSA, and also whether we are going to change the status of the animals, those who want to change from candidate members to full members or associate members. So this is where we vote for all the changes we want to make for these animals, and also admit new members for animals. For the second item on the agenda, we have adoption of reports of the IFMSA officials and IFMSA programs. So the reports of the IFMSA officials have already been sent to the animal folder. So you have to do well to read all the reports. So that's where we vote whether to accept all the reports of the IFMSA officials and also the IFMSA programs. For the third item on the agenda, we have adoption of agreements with external organizations and official relationships. So this is where we vote on MOUs and also agreements we have with other external organizations. But before that, these will be discussed extensively during the president session. So you'd have the vice president for external affairs and the liaison officers come to explain all these MOUs and external agreements with you before we vote on them during the third plenary. Then for the fourth item on the agenda, we have changes to the constitution and bylaws. So this is where we would vote on. There's been a number of oppositions to the changes of constitution and bylaws, and these have also been shared with you in the animal folder. So do all to read them before you come for the G, and they will also be discussed as well extensively during the president session. So this way we are going to vote on these constitution and bylaw changes. So for the changes to the bylaw, they require a two-thirds majority for them to pass, and also with the constitution. The fifth item on the agenda, we have presentation of proposals for honorary life members. So we, in IFMSA, we have positions for people called honorary life members. So these are people who have greatly contributed to achievement of IFMSA. So before the voting is done, a motion must be submitted to elect someone for an honorary life membership position. So after the motion is submitted, then voting will be done by ballot, and the candidate shall be elected by absolute majority. For the sixth item on the agenda, we have presentation of candidates for hosting the next General Assembly August meeting. So at this time, we are going to have NMOs who would want to host the next August meeting come and give us the presentation. So each candidate will have 15 minutes of speaking time and 5 minutes for questions. And you have to bear in mind that the speaking time can also be in the form of audio, visual, or other presentations. And one peculiar thing about this presentation is that no NMO presented a candidature to host the August meeting, so applications are still open till I think the second plenary day. So if any animal would want to apply to host the next August meeting, they are still welcome. But the applications that have been received will be shared with the animals before the presentation and also the voting, so animals can make a solid decision. And the last item on the agenda for the third plenary day would be presentation of programs for applying for IFMS recognition. As you know, IFMS has adapted the program structure, and during every GA we have a number of programs that are presented, so we vote on it whether to accept it as part of the programs IFMS recognized. So this is where we would have the presentation of these programs. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Nasha, who takes the fourth plenary agenda?
Diego?
Okay, so I'm going next for the plenary 4. So the plenary 4 is usually the most exciting plenary because it's when all the elections take place. But that's just the last part of the plenary. So we start first by the adoption of honorary life members. Then we move to the adoption of the IFMSA programs. Then the adoption and possibly some changes to the IFMSA policy statements. And then we move to the actual election. So we'll elect the next IFMSA executive board. But usually this happens in March meeting, but since there's 2 vacant positions, the Vice President for Members and Vice President for External Affairs, those positions will be elected in this August meeting. And then we'll elect the whole IFMSA team of officials and the supervising council members. And we'll finish by adopting by electing the next host for the August meeting 2017. So it's usually a very long plenary, but very exciting, so it's definitely worth joining for any member of your delegations. Ignacia?
Yes, so for the plenary 5, it's just the plenary 5, as you can see, is the last plenary that we have in this meeting. So basically, this plenary will be the adoption of a bunch of reports, and mostly the budget and the financial related items. So for the first part, we will be adopting the report of the Financial Committee. As we briefly explained in the beginning of the webinar, the Financial Committee is a body that is elected from GA to GA that has the duty of reviewing every financial report and also the Travel Assistance Fund and other financial related issues. The Financial Committee also reviews the financial reports of the general meetings we have. So basically, they will present a report most likely on the day before the plenary or 2 days before that. So you guys can review it, and we will be adopting it. Just remember that anytime you adopt the report, you will be adopting the recommendation and the outcomes of the report. That may be, for example, an NMO losing the voting rights or an NMO facing debts and so on. So please make sure that every time you vote upon a report, it's not just voting the letters and the writing, it's just voting on the consequences that may have. So I really would like to encourage you to read the Financial Committee report and all the other reports very thoughtfully, so you know what's going on. And then for the second point, we will have the adoption of the financial report. The Financial Committee will usually comment on whether they recommend adopting this report or not. Then we have the report of the adoption of the financial report of the March meeting that happened in March of this year in Malta. We have also the financial report of the Federation for the previous term that is that you will be able to review and discuss during the President sessions. I know this is a hot topic right now, so make sure you have all your questions prepared so we can have a very smooth President session and plenary as well. Adoption of the updated budget of this term, which is also on the hot topic as the previous one, so make sure you have everything reviewed before the meeting, so you have just the questions, so we can move very quickly and efficiently on these discussions. And then lastly, the adoption of next term's budget. You can find all these documents that will be shared and discussed upon the NMO server as well. And lastly, and as a seventh point, you will have to vote upon the change of the status of the Standing Committee and task forces, which were already explained before. If the NMO or the plenary want to open a new task or close one because they believe that their reason for creation is already succeeded and achieved, that's usually where those task forces are closed or new ones are open. For the eighth point, we will have the presentation of the strategic priorities underpinning the Federation's strategic plan by the incoming Executive Board. Basically, they will present their main, we could say, plan of action or a strategic plan for their terms. And lastly, any other business where any kind of motion that was not included before will be addressed. So I think that's pretty much last plenary. I don't know, guys, if you want to add anything else related to the plenaries itself. Oh, sorry, I'm missing two more points. So we have, I was just wondering where this was. So the adoption of the final report of the CCC report. I already mentioned on the first plenary we have the preliminary report when they comment on what they received before the meeting. But in this adoption, you will be adopting any changes that may have happened during the plenary itself. So, for example, if you had a debt and you didn't have voting rights, and that was in the preliminary CCC report, but you managed to pay the debts and they fixed your voting rights or your voting status, you should be checking whether that's adopted in the final report and vote upon it. So that will be it. Lastly, we will have the closing of the meeting. And in this very cool document that we will be also sharing, you will be able to see all the descriptions from all the plenary points that we just addressed. Okay, so do we have any questions so far for the YouTube? I think we don't.
Nope.
Okay, so just guys, do you want to provide any general kind of tips or recommendations?
So I think at least for our part is finished. If you have any question, feel free to raise it. The only thing I would like to mention is for you to share the webinar that's happening tomorrow for any delegate for the GA. It may be very useful, at least for the newcomers, to make it a bit simpler to understand how a GA works, because the agenda is very packed. There's usually not a lot of moments to relax or to rest, and it may, if they attend the webinar, they'll probably get a bit more out of the GA. So it's going to happen tomorrow at 15 GMT. The three of us and maybe the other two regional directors will join, and we'll be here ready to clarify anything that they may want to ask. As for all the presidents and heads of delegation, It's really true that in case you need anything from the IFMSA team of officials or anyone in charge of anything in IFMSA, like the CCC, the plenary team, feel free to reach out. We try to provide every kind of feedback of support that we can, but it's sometimes difficult to reach out to so many NMO presidents. So feel free to call us and call us apart, and then we can discuss your doubts and then see if you should do anything about it or not. So that's my final comments and recommendations, and see you all very, very soon in Mexico, and safe flights for everyone.
Okay, so before we finish, I would just like to make a final wrap-up on the summaries of recommendations that we just did. So basically, if you're an NMO president, what should you bring to the meeting? I would say you need to bring the receipts of payment of the OC fees and also the membership fees. I think that's very important that you bring them in a USB or printed, as I stated before. You need to also bring your flag for the plenary and your stamp. Every form needs to be stamped and signed. If you don't have an NMO stamp, you can use your fingerprint, so don't worry about it. Besides that, I will recommend you for the reading part that you really prepare before, because if you're planning to read everything during the meeting, I can tell you that is quite unlikely to happen. It's a lot of stuff for reading, and I know some of you guys are having very long flights to arrive to Mexico, so make sure to maybe download them and read them during your flights. That's what I usually did when I was NMO president. And also like to suggest you, if you have a large delegation, like most of you guys do, to divide the reading among your delegates, so you can so you won't have to read all the documents we have, because it's quite a lot if you consider that each candidate has a candidature that is usually 8 to 10 pages long. So I would really like to recommend on dividing at least the candidatures to the relevant officers that are attending the meeting. And lastly, if I could advise you on 3 things that you need to download and have in mind, would be the NMO folder, when you will be able to find every submission, candidature, and so on, the IFMSA Constitution and Bylaws, and the President's Survival Kit. As a very cool annex, the small working group on involvement manual that they created. So we will be sharing these 4 items with you on a follow-up email. If you don't get that email because you're not subscribed to the NMO server, because that is only for presidents, you can approach us. If you are from Europe, you can email Diogo to the email rdeurope@ifmsa.org. If you're for Africa, you can email Edward at rdafrica@ifmsa.org. If you're from the Eastern Mediterranean region, you can email Reda at rdmr@ifmsa.org. And same for Asia Pacific, you can email to Farhan. And lastly, if you're from the Americas, make sure to email me, rdamerica's@ifmsa.org. So we will be sending all those documents so you can give those a look. Just for a final and quick review of how the NMO folder looks like. As you can see here, it's very much organized. It contains everything that you will need. The IFMSA Constitution is here. All the documents that will be discussed will be here. So make sure you find those and download that folder. So I know some NMOs print everything out and create a huge manual on everything to be discussed. It's not really my thing. I think it's a lot of paper, but if that's a strategy you would like to use, feel free to do so. And as Diego say, have very safe flights, and see you all very soon in Mexico. Edward, do you have any final thoughts?
Okay, yeah, so just to add to the little bit all said, try and encourage your delegates to join tomorrow's webinar for the general delegates that are 15 or GMT, and also encourage your members or the members of the delegation to read the document. So try and at least delegate some portions of the items to each delegate and let them have portions they have to read it. It kind of reduces the burden on the animal president. So have a safe flight to Mexico, and see you soon. You're going to have a very nice GA. Have fun.
Okay, thank everyone for joining. See you soon. Bye.